Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Rhett Richens. I'm one of the sales guys here at CaseWorthy. We're very excited today. We have on the line with us one of our most progressive partners, and I'm not going to steal too much of their thunder, but they've been recognized nationally quite a bit these past few months, especially in the last year. And we're really excited to have Jen Koppel on the line with us. She is the Executive Director at LCCEH, as well as Jason Harnish, who is the Program Coordinator. They're going to fill some different roles as we get going through the presentation today, but I'm also joined on the CaseWorthy side by Sam Coy. She handles all the sales operations in the Northeast. Thomas Horst, who handles a big swath of the middle part of the country. Richard Rapolo, who handles the west side, and then me, who handles the southeast side. It's really exciting to see so many of you joining us today. You must be pretty excited to hear the message, but we also have on the line with us Scott Arger, who's the president of CaseWorthy, and then Brian Bingle, the CEO. In terms of an agenda for today, we're going to spend some time here. If I can get this to respond, hang in there with me for a second. There we go. Doesn't seem to be changing for me. Let me stop sharing my screen here and try again here. I'm just going to take some time and introduce Jen Koppel so you understand who she is, her experience, just to kind of describe her experience a little bit with where she's been in the nonprofit world. She spent a long time in the social services world, specifically in the community of Lancaster, and now having opportunities to branch out as a consultant for other groups who are wanting to grow their processes. We'll talk about the Lancaster Coalition specifically, the things that they do, what makes up their coalition, how it was formed, their impact, and some unique things that they're doing in the community. But then we're going to spend a little bit of time in the community-wide solution. And Jen was a lot of the genesis behind how this is being rolled out. We've got a couple other very large partners in the community that are a part of this. And we'll talk about that when we get to those points. The neat thing about the community-wide system is that 5 or 6 years ago, the president of the company, Scott Arger, sat down and laid out a design for this and how it would work in terms of a social services information exchange. We'll spend a little bit of time around security because anytime you talk about a community-wide system on a singular database, people have security questions. So we'll spend a little bit of time addressing those. Jen's going to do the vast majority of the talking today. I'm just going to fill in some little gaps about the product and about the security parameters. But then we're going to go into a live presentation, and that's where Jason is going to come into play, and he's going to take over the controls and actually walk you through a little portion of their database with some test data, and just to give you an idea of how it was configured for them, and then we'll close out with reporting. I believe that I'm going to take the reins back over and walk through some reporting processes at that time. All right, introducing Jen Koppel with the beautiful headshot up there on the left. And Jen, do you just want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing in terms of your education currently, as well as your background, talk a little bit about your time with the county, and then now your time with the coalition and what you've seen happen to it in terms of its growth over the past few years since you have been at its head.
Sure. So good, I guess it's good afternoon here on the East Coast. So I'm not going to read the bio to you. I'm assuming that we can all read, but just to give you some background is I've been in social services for about 25 years, a lot longer than I would like to admit openly, but I've been doing it more often recently. My background is in mental health, and I started in social services as a caseworker for folks and kind of progressed through the system and wound up at the County of Lancaster in the Behavioral Health Division. And in 2008, when President Obama signed into legislation the HEART Act, which is really looking at communities and encouraging them to address homelessness strategically, write a plan, have strategic goals, reach out into the community, build a coalition, and really do that community organizing, which is really President Obama's background. So in our community, we created probably about a 65-person task force that wrote a 10-year plan to end homelessness. And at the time, we had no idea what ending homelessness really even meant, how we were going to define it, what it was going to look like for our particular community, but we took our best guess. And we've learned over the last 7 years that that kind of planning is really organic and iterative, and it needs to be that because of the needs of the community that you're addressing. So at the time, I was the Deputy Director for the Behavioral Health Division for the county, and this coalition's work was given to me as a project to manage, because the county of Lancaster, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, there's 67 counties. Behavioral health services are sometimes joined together because of resourcing. So there's 47 county or county joinders. So the county government where I'm located is south central Pennsylvania, about half an hour south of the capital of Harrisburg. And we have a very large geographic region, and a lot of that's because we're prime farmland in Lancaster County. And we also have a large population of Amish, actually the largest population in the country, I believe. So we have some uniquenesses in that Amish religious contingency. We also have tourism because of that. We have a pretty broad economic diversity. We have a lot of agriculture, obviously. We have tourism. We have industry, like flooring and candy. We make a lot of candy in Lancaster. I'm not exactly sure why, but we make a lot of candy in industry. We also have retail, obviously, like everybody else does. So the county government is just in charge of that one county region, unlike some other parts of the Commonwealth. So the commissioners that are elected to run our county understood that the Behavioral Health Division had a pretty significant skin in the game, because there's probably about 30%, 27-30% of our population in the homelessness world is diagnosed with a serious mental illness or has, I should say, a drug and alcohol substance use or abuse issue. So they gave the resourcing of this county department to this coalition, which is how then I got that as a prime project. So in 2010, we launched this coalition, which was really a change for us. We had been working collaboratively before that, but just as social service providers who were doing the homelessness work, writing the Continuum of Care grant for the federal government, but not really reaching into the community. Oh, sorry, Red moved on. So when we started the coalition, we kind of brought those 35 partners and providers into the coalition sort of as this base, and we had reached out to the private world. We had a gentleman who was running Isaac's Deli, which is a local deli, very well known in our community, was our champion and was our first co-chair of the coalition, in addition to our county commissioners. And in Pennsylvania, we were one of the fortunate communities, which is not the case across the Commonwealth, to have all three of our elected officials unanimously supporting this effort, and that's still uncommon even after all these years. So as far as our growth within the county government system, we took the first 3 years to really look at the infrastructure within our community, what existed, what were people doing in different places that we could make sure that we weren't duplicating, because we have scarce resources. We all know that government money is not, one, guaranteed, two, getting any larger as we move forward through these economic plannings and new administrations and all of that kind of stuff. So nothing's really a given. So we knew what we needed to make sure that we weren't duplicating effort, and we also wanted to use the expertise that we didn't necessarily have. I mean, at the time, I understand a little bit more about zoning laws in Pennsylvania than I did 7 years ago, but at that time, I did not understand them at all. So we certainly didn't want to, try and be experts in areas that we really weren't. So as we developed an organizational structure, went to different meetings, made sure that we were kind of all on the same page facilitating this work, we started to pick up partners and pick up resources. And over about a 5-year period, we grew our partners to about 85. And at that point, we really realized that it was time. We couldn't really grow anymore. We were working for the government, and I say this everywhere I speak. There really is an inherent paranoia between government and faith communities, and there should be. So we weren't able to really garner that rich resource that's in our community. We have in Lancaster County over 800 churches, and that's a benefit to our community. It has made Lancaster one of the most generous communities in the Commonwealth. We had an extraordinary Give Day. That's something that we do here about a week before Thanksgiving, and all the nonprofits that want to be a part of it register with our local community foundation. It's a whole big party day. It's really amazing. There's so much energy here. In the first year that the community foundation launched the Extraordinary Give, we had raised I want to say maybe $1 million, $2 million. This year, Lancaster County donated $7.2 million into the social service nonprofit world. That's amazing. So we have a very giving community that we're very blessed with here, but we needed to engage that community very differently, and the faith community being a part of that. So we approached the commissioners of the county and asked if we could be moved to a nonprofit organization that was large enough to host us, that had resourcing for the ability for us to remain autonomous, so that we wouldn't go somewhere that was super small, that we would basically double their staffing complement and be absorbed within their mission. We wanted to keep this mission of ending homelessness at the forefront. So at the end of the day, we had 5 organizations that approached us, offering to host us, and we wound up, and you can see here in this slide, that we wound up at Lancaster General Health, Penn Medicine. Penn Medicine is the medical system that's out of the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and about a year ago, Lancaster General Health, which has the market share of healthcare in Lancaster County, merged underneath the Penn Medicine umbrella, making it a very large medical provider in the Commonwealth. And people would often ask, like, why are we going to Lancaster General? Well, we knew, because we have dedicated resources to this coalition that most other communities in Pennsylvania don't have, which has been an asset to us. There are 4 of us. It's myself, Jason, who's going to talk later, Mike Foley, and Jody Heinrich. We have grant writers and researchers. So what we do is, we knew looking forward that we were going to have to really start making that clear tie that's between healthcare and housing. We know that folks that are homeless, consistently homeless, often die about 40% earlier than life expectancies in the United States. We know that folks often get reactive treatment as opposed to proactive treatment. And could we help the hospital system garner funds that were coming out from the federal government around those initiatives? So that's where we landed, and we landed there in September of last year. And Rick, can you go to the next slide, please? So we talked a little bit about the first bullet, but what we did once we left the county of Lancaster and moved to Lancaster General, we were no longer working for the government, and we were able to garner relationships that we hadn't been able to garner before. So when we left the county, we had about 85 partners, and we picked up a large percentage of that increase from 85 to 160 as churches in our county. And what's really interesting about the churches is they're actively pulling together in their smaller communities to, like, pulling all of their benevolence funds together and then funneling them through efforts that we're coordinating, which is really cool. Additionally, we picked up some other coalitions and some other work, just again to make sure that we weren't duplicating effort. And we really, I got asked this question yesterday about what's a partner to the coalition, and we never officially said at any point in time, like, you're in or you're out, and this makes you a partner and this doesn't make you a partner. And we've felt that that's potentially exclusionary. So we've always defined partner as someone that we've provided support to, whether it be technical support and how they could use benevolence funds, for example, at a church, or how we could help a particular community, police department, emergency medical service, something like that. So partnership is loosely defined as someone that's given us a resource or we've given a resource to them. So as we moved through this process since 2009, the federal government started to come out with different initiatives. End veteran homelessness. Functionally end veteran homelessness was sort of the second iterative process. And functional meaning that you have the infrastructure to rapidly rehouse veterans as they come into the system. End chronic homelessness. And for those of you who have been in the homelessness world, you remember hearing 100,000 Homes campaign. You remember hearing about the Zero 2016 campaign. The Zero 2016 is now built for zero. And they've all been technical support campaigns that have helped us as communities move forward. And we were fortunate enough in September of 2015 to receive our confirmation from the federal government, the Department of Veteran Affairs, the Housing and Urban Development Department, and the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness gave us our confirmation for functionally ending veteran homelessness. And at the time, we had no eligible veterans in our system. However, unfortunately, since then, we've had a few veterans enter the system. However, every single one of them we've been able to house in less than 30 days, and in some cases in less than 2 weeks, because of the infrastructure that we built to address that particular need. And I'm going to jump down to the Built for Zero. In August of this past year, we reached the actual 0 point defined by the federal government for that chronic homelessness piece. And we have an urban center of Lancaster City, and then we have the rural county that surrounds it. So when we talk about chronic homelessness, we have a small population in our county. Our county is just about 600,000 individuals across the whole county. So we're not talking about a chronic population that you would experience in somewhere like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Los Angeles, something like that. So, excuse me, we've housed, I believe, 85 individuals who met the definition for chronic homelessness in the last 3 years. So, we're not talking huge numbers. However, we have been able to build the infrastructure again in place for that. So with our veteran homelessness piece, we had been part of the Mayor's Challenge, which was part of the Joining Forces campaign that was a combination of Mrs. Obama and Dr. Jill Biden. And I believe it was November 14th. They had a capstone event and invited communities to come into the White House and celebrate the end of this administration federally, but also the ending phase of this particular campaign because of the administration leaving. But we were charged as communities attending that event that we are to continue this work forward, and that they're to use words that I heard Mrs. Obama say on that day, which really resonated with me, is that there can't be any daylight between our shoulders as we stand next to each other, and we push forward into the next phase of our work, which is continuing to build this work around our veterans and serving our veterans. So that was a really interesting event. We were able to help other communities with our work and how we've built our infrastructure and help bring them along. So annually we serve just over 2,000 unique individuals. The large majority, about 75% of them, are new. We have very low recidivism in our system. We have just about 4%, which is the federal goal of 5%. We're a little bit less than that. Of that 2,200 individuals that you can see on the slide, we are serving a large number of children. For us, we define children as anyone under the age of 18. So there's certainly a need, and as we've weathered the economic recession starting in 2008, our numbers, this was the first year from our fiscal year 15-16 into 16-17 that we did not see a significant increase in the unique number of individuals. But up until this year, we had seen on average about a 30% increase in the number of people served, which is really striking given the fact that you can see on that last bullet that we've seen a 47% reduction in our point-in-time count. And when you talk to our providers that are doing emergency shelter, the need is high. We're seeing a large volume of people, but the issue is that we're not keeping them as long as we had historically, so we can see more people, and that makes us see less people in a day, if that makes sense. So, you want to go to the next slide, please?
Absolutely, and thanks, Jen. And I was hoping in this next slide we can take just a moment and talk to your relationship with the United Way and the CAP, and also the genesis behind why this is impactful.
Sure. So you can see on the slide the visual at the top, and it's sort of the circle. And we know that when we engaged in a relationship with CaseWorthy, I believe that was 2015, maybe. Rick can correct me if I'm wrong. No, it was 2014. Anyway, so we knew that we needed to understand a different level of data in our community. One of the things that we recognized was our folks have a lot of stigma against them. People in the general community believe that individuals experiencing homelessness don't work. They are drug addicts, whatever awful term you want to put to it. But we also know that there's a lot of food pantries, and in the individual food pantries in our community, we're getting frustrated because people were calling this particular food pantry and then going 2 miles down the road and trying another food pantry, and then that created this idea that people were scamming the system. And we know that that's largely untrue, because if you talk about living wage being more than $10 an hour and minimum wage in Pennsylvania being $7.25 an hour, our average rent in Lancaster County is $834. Well, if you're working a minimum wage job, you have to work over 100 hours a week to pay for that. So we also know that 44% in our homelessness system work. And of the other percentage, there's a percentage that receive disability services and disability income, but there's also a percentage that want to work, and it's also difficult if you're experiencing homelessness and you don't have a cell phone for an employer to call, or you can't get a shower, you have to carry your bags with you, whatever your circumstances it's hard for our folks to get gainful employment as well. So we wanted to understand our community differently. We wanted to understand if there is a population in the northwest part of our county that's using having repeated asks for food banks. We wanted to know why. Is it because there's a lack of industry, or is it something geographically that we could resource differently to that community? So when we talked with CaseWorthy, one thing that we really liked was the flexibility of it, because we wanted to have the centralized intake, and we have one for our homelessness world, but we wanted a centralized intake across the county for the social services organizations that were looking at or providing any type of service, from food pantry to community meals to case management for family, moms and kids, or dads and kids, or dads in prison, whatever social service organization was out there. Because in our homelessness world, when we created our centralized intake, the motivation behind that was that we didn't want our families and households to have to tell their story every single time they walked in a door, because that's really frustrating. And we know from my own experiences, you go to the doctor and you answer questions, and they refer you to a specialist, and you go and you answer the same questions, and those questions are in the computer, and that specialist has access to them. So we really wanted to mitigate and improve the experience quality for the individuals that are coming into our system. So it was difficult for us to engage other non-homeless service providers, and we do have organizations in our current system. We have about 35 organizations. Largely, the majority of them provide services to us in the homelessness world, regardless of whether it's federally funded and HUD defined, or more of that upstream work for families who are at risk. It's still related more specifically to homelessness, with the exception of the Lancaster County Council of Churches, and that was sort of our first outreach into food pantry. We have a Wheels to Work program for individuals to get cars that are donated, Where to Work, which is clothing, professional clothing for individuals trying to seek work, and then the Food Hub. They also run our winter shelter that opens Monday and is for cold weather. So we started with the winter shelter approach and went into the Council of Churches, but then we were able to bring in the rest of their programs over time. So as we moved forward and understood that this was really going to be a benefit to the community as a whole, the Community Action Partnership in our area also hired a new chief executive officer. And that gentleman and I spoke and really understood that this is exactly where both of us wanted to go long term, really get an idea of who has food insufficiency, who's living in poverty. And at the same time, our United Way adopted 4 bold goals. One of them was to reduce poverty in the county by 50%. Another one is to have kids eligible for pre-K. To have all kids ready to enter kindergarten in Lancaster County for all Lancaster Countyans to have some kind of post-secondary credential, whether that be a tech school, community college, whatever, and then for all Lancaster County residents to be connected to a medical home. And when they launched those 4 bold goals, they also launched the collective impact model, where they wanted communities to pull together and start partnering, recognizing that if communities worked collaboratively, they would have deeper impact instead of a scattered shot model that United Way had up until then. Well, we recognized that we were already doing collective impact. We just didn't know what it was called. And if you add in the Community Action Partnership and you add in the United Way now in the same model, well, we were really pulling a lot of organizations and communities together. And we really started to see very clearly that we could have impact data that spanned all of these, all of the circles that you see on the infographic, police departments, our HMIS system, healthcare. And by us being at Lancaster General, we had that healthcare tie already. So I don't mean to diminish, this is not easy work, But we're really fortunate right now that we're at kind of the perfect storm of being able to pull these large organizations and move forward and really have an ability to see if a Head Start program attendee child who went to the Community Action Partnership and got Head Start services, if they really never did come back into the system. We can guess that now, but we can't say for sure. And if we look at, did our homelessness work really have an impact? Okay, so maybe the family doesn't come back into the homelessness system, but that doesn't mean that we've helped them. And now we can really start to see, are we actually providing quality services to these families? Are we raising them up out of poverty? Are we helping them get thriving wage jobs? Are we making sure that they're not falling off the cliff by making $1 more than what the benefits that they're entitled to allow? So, I think that this has been probably the most exciting piece for us in our community is the social service exchange. So I don't know, Red, is there something else you wanted me to cover with that?
No. I'll just take a moment here and speak to some technicalities. Now, the implementation or installation that's happening in Lancaster County is a singular database where each organization is able to use the configuration tool set, and we can get down the line with each of you individually as you have questions, each attendee on the call, that is. And the neat thing about being on a singular database is that it allows all of them to look at real-time availability across their community. It allows them to run real-time aggregate reports, look at real-time service distribution, so that not only are they able to limit abusive services, which we are very happily finding out is not a huge issue in Lancaster County, but it also gives you a chance to see if they're receiving services day of, if they have any upcoming appointments. And again, all of this is structured around the MOUs that are in place, the releases of information. And I don't know if you have anything that you want to touch on there, Jen, on how you guys at the steering committee level are stitching your community together, or any tough decisions that you've made or lessons learned along the way, as communities might want to start going down that path.
Right. So I would strongly suggest if there is a community that wants to go down this path, is to create a steering committee of key partners, because at the end of the day, you're going to have some decisions made at some point, regardless of whether they're around how you handle individuals who may not want to share their information across the system. And in that particular case, we as a community decided to go with the healthcare model of you're automatically opted in to the system and into the sharing. And then if you want to actively opt out, then you have the opportunity to do that. But and it's really about a presentation. Because one of the things that we learned in our previous HMIS vendor was that we were presenting this release of information to families and clients with the whole, the whole list of partners they were going to be sharing their information with. And it really, at the end of the day, was too overwhelming. And when you see that, people were going, oh my gosh, I don't want to share. I don't know who they are. I don't want to share my information with them. So what we did was we still share that list, but we just share it after, like on the back of the form instead of on the front of the form. And that doesn't sound like a lot of a change, and it's not, but it's a visual presentation. So again, we go with this opt-in model that by signing this release, you're sharing your information. The individuals have the document in front of them that they can see who those partners are. And as of today, we've had no one actively opt out. But that doesn't mean that there isn't someone across our community to do that. They would want to do that. And they have very good reason to. But we made the decision at the steering committee to go with that healthcare model of we're opting you in. And then we're going to give you the option to opt out. You just have to tell us that. I think another thing that we've learned is you really need to engage an attorney. I hate to say that, but you really do, to understand where HIPAA and high tech start and stop. Because it was very apparent at the very early stages of this that those words were just thrown out. Well, we can't share that information because of HIPAA, because of high tech, or because of both. And the differences between confidentiality, privacy, and what that means. Because the information that we create and enter into CaseWorthy now for our homelessness providers is private, but it's not necessarily confidential. And understanding the differences between those words and being educated about that as a steering committee moving forward. And we did get, just this week, guidance from the attorney that we've engaged that this is where it starts and stops, and it's really around, in our community, it's around the physical and behavioral health treatment only. So that was, again, what we had suspected, but you need to have that legal guidance moving forward.
Great, thank you, Jen. And we talk about the release of information, sharing of information, and then the concerns that sometimes come up around being on a singular database or instance of the system. And the way we've been able to address this is through the use of these 5 controls that we list here, and then I'll talk about a 6th one. But the first layer of security in the system is role-based security. Each user in the system is mapped to a specific role. That role has specific pieces of functionality mapped to it. So specific dashboards, menus, those kinds of things. And so the first layer of security is limiting the information that they have access to by limiting the form access that the user can actually navigate to in the system. We also mark every single piece of data in the system all the way down to the field level with the organization and user ID of who collected it, which allows us to then use the security tree control, which is the 4th option here, and be very specific about how that data flows. So imagine a security tree control is the closer you get to the trunk, the higher level you are on the management, and then the branches kind of go out from there to the lower level or line level users in the application. Now, we also do a complete record sharing where we say, okay, I'm the owner of this record, but I'm going to share it with this individual. We do the same thing on programs, which is no different than record sharing, where if you run a specific program like a Ryan White or HIV/AIDS or domestic violence, those programs can absolutely be 100% locked down so that that client is only visible to those individuals who administer to them in that specific program. Which is part of the record sharing, and then user data sharing allows, again, for the limiting of clients and programs across the organization to say that we're going to share this program with this particular provider because they also offer domestic violence services and are a referral partner to us, and we have that MOU in place, but we are not going to share this data with this organization. And the really neat thing about that is that what happens with the new tool setup is that each organization is able to manage how they share their data across the community without interfering with anyone else's setup and configuration, because we map everything to the specific organization ID and user ID. And we can get in depth with you on a one-on-one basis on how that works. Another key component from a technical aspect of the implementation going in the Lancaster community is the web portal. The web portal is in use for us across our client base quite wide in terms of the deliverables or functionality in the web portal. Our initial deployments were in volunteer management, where they could log in, where they could actually submit the request to be a volunteer, fill out an application, be approved, then have access online to sign up for specific events, track their hours, those kinds of things. But since then, we've jumped into grant management, which manages the entire process of submission of your requests to the scoring and awarding, as well as the submission of ongoing compliance data and financials, those kinds of things. The big win for us in the web portal really came from our first full deployment in the city of Atlanta. And what they found is this was the first really open enrollment deployment of the web portal for us. And what we found is that in the city of Atlanta, they had 75,000 self-registrations within the first 4 months of going live on the web portal. And you can't staff up for that. And so the web portal is going to be implemented in the Lancaster community in a variety of ways. We're in talks with United Way about how grant management can be used. We're in talks with the Workforce Development Board for Employment, talking about how it can be used at the CAP and so individuals can self-referrals, log in, see all of the different resources available to them in the community. Now, from an HMIS standpoint, this is just a little smattering of the type of HMIS things we do: coordinated assessment, centralized intake, graphical housing. Again, this is just a smattering to throw up on the screen for you to reference if you would like to reach out to CaseWorthy for any further information. Jen mentions a community-wide system and solution, and the great thing about us is we're so wide in terms of our expertise in the health and human social services world because of all of our partners in various different capacities. that have allowed us to really be able to jump in and address a lot of the needs of the community on the fly, because a lot of it already exists in the baseline database. And so we, again, here is a large smattering. I pulled in the differentiator slide because I wanted to talk a little bit with Jen about a couple things. Now, when we talked to Jen, one of the big components and needs for her, because of the way that their county is set up, was the geographical coding, so that we could actually get in and look for not just city, state, and zip and specific addresses, but campsites and those kinds of things. So Jen, can you talk a little bit around the specific needs of the rural community and how you guys impact and outreach to those individuals in your community that may be in campsites or off the grid?
Sure. We have a small contingency of outreach workers. We have 3, hopefully to have 4 soon, that cover our county. And by outreach workers, that means that they're going out into the communities to look for folks. And we also, everybody who's in the federal government, excuse me, HMIS, we're all doing point-in-time counts as well. With the rural community, as some of you may be from, you have people who are living in a patch of woods or underneath a bridge somewhere that obviously they don't want to be found. And how can we find them? So what we wanted to do was to be able to send our teams out, or even send, with the outreach workers, send out police, or if a police officer encounters somebody staying somewhere, or maybe somebody is just bordering a property that another person owns and they find them, just have a way to communicate that specific location. There's lots of trees in our area. There's lots of rural farmland with patches of trees on it. So how do we know which patch of tree to look in, to be simplistic? And we have good relationships with all of the police departments in our community, and they are pretty good about telling us a generalized area. But when you're trying to send teams out for the point in time count in the middle of the dark, somewhere between midnight and 5 in the morning, you want to be able to give them as precise of a location as you can. And we also have, as lots of communities have, we have difficulties with panhandlers. And one of the stigma combating things that we've been doing is to make sure that when we see a panhandler somewhere, we send one of our outreach workers out, regardless of whether it's in the city or the county. And that outreach worker connects or doesn't, depending on the willingness of that individual. But because we've been able to do that really quickly, we've built an understanding that the vast majority of the panhandlers in our communities are not homeless or veterans or whatever the sign says. They're largely substance users, or what we sort of sarcastically call social entrepreneurs, and just getting money, and maybe housed, and may just be doing this for the cash. So the geographical location piece is really something that we wanted to get at quickly, so that if we're an hour and a half north of where the outreach worker is, we can send quickly, here, can someone, one of the 4 of you, head up to this location and check out this campsite, or check out this tent that we found, or these bags that we found next to this air conditioner behind the church.
Perfect, and thank you, Jen. And then if you just want to spend just 1 minute on the scan card technology and how you issued those and how they were intended for use at the winter shelter to speed along those processes.
Sure. So our cold weather shelter that I talked briefly about before is hosted at the YWCA, and it's manned by local churches. They take a week rotation at a time. And we wanted that process to be as quick because, 1, it's cold, and 2, humane as possible, because we also had these, and I'm sorry, I should have said the winter shelter is for women and children only. We keep the men separated at the emergency shelter, and it's really just about capacity. It's not about separating gender. But we could build capacity and have our women and kids in and out of the cold. So the scan cards would actually eliminate a paper voucher that the women were supposed to carry with them throughout the day and then present to this volunteer. And we just didn't really feel that was a very humane experience, and we wanted to reduce, because if you're trying to carry a paper and your bags and you just can't get in, wouldn't it be better if we could give you a card with a barcode on it and you could just be beeped in quickly and get in out of the cold, and just have this be as positive as an experience as possible. So the winter shelter was to be issuing, the scan cards at the check-in point where you got connected to the shelter, and then the volunteers who have some limited, at times have limited computer skills, could just take the barcode scanner and beep it over, scan it over the barcode, and then they could just let you in much quicker and really reduce the amount of time, because sometimes it was taking 10 minutes or more to check somebody in. This was going much quicker.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. And again, we've got Jason coming up here in just a second. So Jason, go ahead and ready your screen, and I will try to make you the presenter here. Again, just reach out to us if you have any questions or would like this slide deck to reference. Just go ahead and reply to that email that you received out there if you're interested in receiving any information about CaseWorthy. But we're going to go specifically into the LCCEH database and see how they function. And Jason, did you get that invite? Was that the right invite to send?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, Jason, if you just want to take it away and just kind of give us what you would give any person that you're trying to give a little 15-minute introduction to the application, just your usual, please.
Sure. So I'm actually going to show you the workflow that our coordinated assessment uses. So what you're seeing here is just the regular client dashboard. And these are all customizable. We have chosen these specific things to be shown on here for quick reference for our workers. But then when they have a client come in for an assessment, they can just start the assessment thus. We ask that they search for clients with 3 letters in the first name and 3 letters in the last name. That way when you check for duplicates, it casts a pretty wide net across the database. It cuts down on spelling errors and duplicate clients. So when they find it, they just choose it. And then we ask that they just verify all of the information that's in here. So anything that has a little star beside it would be required information, whether that is required by us as the coalition or by HUD. That is information that the database forces them to fill out before they can continue on with the assessment. So once all that is verified, by moving through this, it moves through the tree over on this side, allowing us to keep going forward with the assessment there. So here's a place to add aliases. Now this would be more like nicknames or names that they're otherwise known by, which allows the system to also search for the same client under several different first names. So if sometimes they go by Steve and sometimes they go by Rand, if you search for either name, it will bring up the same client record. So the case notes is where we store things like our release of information. We can store the client's signature with their release of information in as a case note. So we have them, we have the intake workers do that. We make sure that they do that about once every 3 years, just to make sure that the clients are kept up to date on their the release of information. The address history, as you can tell, this is a test client, and we have quite a bit of information in here for him. But this allows us to look back over to see where they have lived in the past, and we encourage all of our workers to be as thorough as is realistic when doing an intake. Sometimes it is not realistic to add a complete address history, but a year or 2 worth of address history is certainly helpful when we are looking at trends and what the client has been through. And then this allows us to add in family members. So currently this is a family of 5. If we wanted to add a row or add a person, you just add a row, and then this allows you to search for existing client records, or if it's a new client, like a newborn baby, or they got a new significant other or they have a child that they added to the household, this would be a place to fill out all this information. Again, the starred areas are what is required. And then everything else, we ask that they fill out as much as they can. But again, that stuff is not required. And then when that's all filled out, we hit save to move on. With the coordinated assessment, we actually give the intake workers a lot of different options to add case notes. As you can see, there are 3 different places to add case notes through their workflow, which is something that they asked for, whether it's the release of information done here, notes about family makeup or changes in family makeup here, and then general case notes are usually added at the end. And again, workflows are completely customizable, so if they didn't want all these case note additions, I mean, we wouldn't have to have them in here. Right, and then just add them into our coordinated assessment. And this allows you to enroll not just the head of household, but also the other members of the household. And we like to add them, we like them to add members of the household that are present during the assessment. So if there are 3 members of the household currently present during the assessment, especially for coordinated assessment, we ask that they be included. If they do not come with, say, all their kids, we ask that the kids not be included in the coordinated assessment. Now, that would be different if it was a residency program, like a rapid rehousing program. Then we would ask that everybody in the household that will be living in the housing or looking for an apartment together would be included. So we'll go with 3 just so you can see kind of a variation of what's asked as far as these assessments go. So CaseWorthy gives us the option to copy past assessment data. And I will do that just because it vastly speeds up the process. So this allows us to copy assessments that have been completed in the past. So we're going to go with the PATH outreach. Let's see what this guy has. We're not going to select any for him. And she must not have any. Okay, so we're going to just copy assessments for the head of household. All right, so as you can see, that already preloaded client data in here. So then if we preload, we just ask that all of the data is verified before we move on. My system's a little slow this morning. All right, so again, as we go through here, our starred fields are required. Again, most of these requirements are HUD requirements. So non-cash benefits, you can choose a couple of different options there. Some of these, if you choose yes, it comes up with a whole bunch of new questions. So you just have to watch your answers and make sure you're saying or answering all the questions that have stars. So as we move on, get to the financial assessments. HUD requests or requires that the financial assessments only happen for adults. So if children are receiving disability benefits, they're supposed to be put under the parents, the head of household's financial assessment. That way that income is being captured for the household. As we can see, this guy has 0 income, so we can save no income. And health insurance. And then these would be going into assessments that are specific to the program. So these are not HUD-required assessments. These would just be assessments that we specifically, or in this case, coordinated assessments specifically asked to be included in their workflow. And again, as you can see, none of these questions are required to be filled out. They normally do fill them out as they ask those questions. Here is a substance abuse. Again, if we say yes, a whole bunch of questions populate. And an employment assessment as well. And because this guy was I think that's all the required information there. Because he was has a vet status in his demographics, this is asked. Otherwise, this would be skipped. All right, so this would be for a child. As you can see, there are much fewer questions for children. Again, that logic is all on the backside of these assessments. And these are all baseline. So let me just quick go through here. And as you can see, we will skip the financial because this is a child. We should just go straight down to the health insurance. And I believe that the logic on these will also skip our substance abuse. Yep. So as you can see, we skipped over the substance abuse, the employment, and the veteran because he did not meet any of the conditions. I don't remember what I said for the head of household, but we'll just do this. All right. So again, obviously, you would ask these questions and follow through with the client's answers. The program data is, these categories are HUD defined. Homeless means either in a emergency shelter or literally homeless or fleeing domestic violence. I'm sorry. Fleeing domestic violence is its own category. So this would be either living in an emergency shelter or staying in a place that not meant for human habitation. So we'll say that Elaine does not have any. All right, so we'll say that she has a little bit of income, just to see what that looks like. And then you'll see what that looks like on the main page then as well, on the client dashboard. All right, so. And again, I'm just going to save past these so we can get to the end here. All right, so this page here, once it loads, this is a list of all of our housing programs that we have in the COC. So this was originally set up, we had a whole bunch of eligibility rules put under every program, and then we learned it didn't ever say that anybody was eligible because the rules were so restrictive, but the programs actually had a whole bunch of exceptions to these rules, so they weren't really realistic. So instead, we just eliminated all the rules, and then this allows us to, for example, if you click yes, is eligible, and then you can put on a waiting list and send an email to the organization, which basically tells a worker, in this case, the Tabor Emergency Shelter, to expect this client who is coming on a waiting list, and you can send them a referral directly from this screen as part of the workflow. And one more case note option, and we are done. So this gives us a summary of all the things we did. And when we hit done, we now see that the 3 members of the household are enrolled in our program. The family financial information has been updated. And this allows us then to come in here and record services for the family under our enrollments, along with a myriad of other options that we could do. We could go in and do other assessments, etc. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is in these dashboards that we've set up. But again, this is all based on the user's role, as Rhett said earlier. So every role that we have has different dashboards and different options to look at data. This one is probably our most robust and largest, because they make so many referrals to different programs. Yeah, so that's kind of a basic overview of what we offer here with our with this role. Red, did you want me to say anything else?
Hey, no, that's perfect. I know we've only got about 2 minutes left, and thank you so much, Jason and Jen. But I think that just to wrap things up, I think that was a great presentation. I love that you shared a lot of the conditional logics and how the steps skip if they are not applicable, and a workflow of that size and that magnitude takes a little while to build. But now that is part of our baseline. So, we're very appreciative of our partnership with you, but I think I'm going to take the controls back over for a minute because we capture all that data. It's probably a good idea to show how we then pull that data out of our system. And so, Jason shared, how they're doing this, and the neat thing for us is that we just found this out on a call with HUD, with all of their HUD certified vendors, that we are the only vendor to successfully, for the last 4 years, get all of our HMIS client base up to speed on the new data standards before October 1st, and we're very proud of that fact. And it was very nice to hear HUD say that in that setting. But this is just to give you an example or a smattering of some of the examples of our reports. Now, this is the HMIS compliance reports, and these are our baseline ones that we keep completely compliant. The onus is upon us here at CaseWorthy to keep you compliant on all your APRs, your HIC, the PIT, the RHY reports, APR, which is the one of the big ones, the AHAR. And then on top of that, you get very specific with the HOP1 SSVF grants. A lot of you out there may have CSBG or block grants and Roma grants. We also do the VI SPDAT. We house the VI SPDAT directly in CaseWorthy with our collaboration with the 100,000 Homes Project. And then also credit counseling, which is another big component of a lot of you HMIS providers out there, which we are also certified through HUD and also have these great compliance reports. From a systemic view of CaseWorthy, we have a lot of different reports, a lot of dashboard reporting capabilities that we can interact with and actually drill into the information all the way to the end clients. And I'm really zooming through this just for speed and time purposes. I also, in advance, pulled up a couple of our reports. This is just a service summary report that's pulling the services we've offered for a specific date range. It shows, the date and time. I ran this just 4 minutes ago here for us to look at. Now, I want to take a look at some of this and just show you how interactive these reports are. So this is 9 pages of reports that summarize the services that have been offered. Now, if I want to, we have almost 5,000 bed night services logged. I can click into those bed night services, and what it does is it loads a sub-report so that you can very quickly audit this. You can look for discrepancies by clicking on these and sorting these in various different orders so that I can see, maybe this $100 service that was authorized is out of line. Really gives you a lot of audit capabilities. It's one of our brands that we don't just provide you with a summary report, but we also provide you with the backup data behind that so you can quickly audit it to ensure the accuracy of the report or to find discrepancies. Now you can export these in a variety of different formats, as you can see here, and that's available on all of our reports. The last piece or component that I want to close out with today is our ad hoc reporting tool, which is our CaseWorthy analytics tool. And the way I like to show this, or prefer to show this, is by bringing in a specific scenario. And the scenario that I like to share is this one over here. I can drag it over. You received the following email from your executive director. I need to know the sum of services and count of services provided to men aged 18 through 50 who have received services through the following programs: English for Employment, Permanent Supportive Housing, and Safe Haven. Oh, and this information also needs to be sorted by service type. And I get everything from laughter to tears when I do this demo across the country. But I want to show you how, in just a matter of minutes, I can pull in the count of services and sum of services totals. I can pull in the program names so that we can sort down to those 3 specific programs. We need to bring in service type as well, so I'll drop that here. We have a couple filters for age group because we're looking at that age 18 through 50. And then we also need to be able to sort by gender, so I'll pull that in. And all of these are configurable with our tool set on the fly. So if you need to add an additional field or an additional table to pull information, that's very easily done. And you can configure an unlimited amount of these for yourselves because we allow you access through the tools to do that, as well as the ones that we set up with you during implementation. Now we have 33,000 services to the tune of $1.6 million worth of services. So what I'll do now is I'll start paring this down, and I'll pull in English for Employment, Permanent Supportive Housing, and Safe Haven. And I did do that for convenience so that we could rapidly grab those today. And as you can see, now we have the 3 programs, and these totals update as we go. So what I'll do is I'll apply my first filter to get that full age 18 through 50 range. And these totals update for me again. Now as you can see, we'll apply the male gender filter. And we have those. And now what we're looking at is program by program, service type by service type, all of the services and count of services offered to males age 18 through 50 in our database. And the neat thing here is maybe you don't want to see this as a grid, maybe you want to see this as a specific pie chart, and you want to turn on and turn off these different data elements to see how they compare. Maybe you want to see this as a line chart or a bar chart. And again, all of these are exportable in a variety of formats for you. You can also save these and share these. Now another key component of all of our reports, including the analytics, is the ability, and if I come here I'll show you on this launch form, the ability to schedule these reports. So any report in the system can be scheduled and be shared and distributed with a team automatically at any point in time that you choose for the future. And I think that really wraps it up for us here at CaseWorthy, and I'd like to send out a huge thanks to our partners in Lancaster. Not only are they incredible partners on the development and advancement side for our company and our product, but they're also great partners with us in terms of policy and advancements for future developments, and then also jumping on board to share with you all their successes. So thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jason. And any of you attendees out there that may want additional information, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We're here and we'll answer, as well as we'll probably extend a handout to you for attending today. Again, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Jason. Everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.